We begin with Nigeria. As the US mulls expanding its travel ban to 36 more countries, Nigeria has issued a stark warning. The nation says the US could face retaliatory action and risk losing access to strategic minerals in West Africa.
The world's most powerful economy may have just picked a fight with the wrong country. In a move that surprised Washington, Nigeria is hinting at cutting off access to the rare minerals that keep America's technology, weapons, and clean energy projects alive. These are not the kind of resources you can simply buy from the next country over. Without them, factories will stop working, defense projects will slow to a crawl, and entire industries will face billion-dollar losses. What started as a normal travel ban could now trigger a supply chain crisis so serious it would reach from the Pentagon's war rooms to the phone in your pocket. Before we continue, hit that like button to help us beat the YouTube algorithm. In late June 2025, whispers of an expanded US travel ban traveled across West Africa, targeting dozens of nations including Nigeria. But instead of backing down, Nigeria flipped the board with a clever twist, hinting that if visas get squeezed, so might America's lifeline to essential minerals buried deep in African soil. The US has long used travel restrictions as a tool to push for better cooperation on security and deportation matters. Under President Trump's administration, these bans have grown, starting with a handful of countries and now eyeing an addition of 36 more, with the majority of them in Africa. Nigeria, as the giant of the continent with over 200 million people, finds itself in the crosshairs. However, instead of lodging complaints, Nigerian officials are already threatening to cut off trade agreements, specifically in the mineral sector. When most people think of valuable resources, gold and oil come to mind. But today's real treasure lies hidden in places most would not expect. Lithium powers your smartphone battery. Cobalt makes electric vehicles possible. Rare earth elements keep wind turbines spinning and defense systems operational. These materials have become the backbone of modern civilization, and Nigeria sits on significant deposits of several key minerals. What makes this situation interesting is not only Nigeria's mineral wealth, but the timing. America desperately needs these materials to compete with China in the clean energy race, reduce dependence on unreliable supply chains, and maintain technological superiority. Yet Washington seems willing to risk these crucial relationships over visa policies. Nigeria's Foreign Minister Yusuf Tugar has warned that the US could miss out on essential and rare earth mineral deals if it bans citizens of West African countries. He pointed out that slapping visa limits on all ECOWAS member states would essentially create invisible walls that block business flows. Tugar's message was clear and calculated. It meant that West Africa is open for business, but only if the doors swing both ways. However, the current tension did not just start from nowhere. Multiple forces have converged to create what experts call a perfect storm of mineral geopolitics. The global semiconductor shortage exposed Western dependence on Asian manufacturing. Russia's invasion of Ukraine disrupted traditional energy flows. Climate change demands exceptional infrastructure transformation. Each crisis requires materials that developing nations control, yet Western policies often treat these countries as afterthoughts rather than partners. Beijing currently supplies more than 50% of U.S. demand for 24 critical minerals, including more than 90% of demand for rare earth elements. America's overwhelming dependence on China for these materials represents a strategic vulnerability that keeps Pentagon planners awake at night. Meanwhile, Chinese companies have spent more than $10 billion acquiring mining and critical mineral assets in Africa, with investments in minerals like cobalt, lithium, and rare earths mostly secured in baud. 2023 and 2024. Beijing is building entire supply chains, creating jobs, and establishing long-term partnerships with African governments. The Chinese approach differs basically from traditional Western engagement. Where American companies focus on quarterly profits and short-term returns, Chinese state-owned enterprises think about the future. They build roads, hospitals, and schools alongside mining operations. They train local engineers and provide scholarships for African students to study in Chinese universities. This patient capital approach has created deep relationships that extend far beyond commercial BOS. Transactions. The results speak for themselves. Chinese companies now operate major mining projects across Africa, from copper mines in Zambia to cobalt operations in the Democratic Republic of Congo. They have built thousands of miles of roads, dozens of hospitals, and numerous schools. Chinese-funded infrastructure projects have transformed African capitals and connected remote regions to global markets. Nigeria now leverages this competitive dynamic advantageously. Rather than accepting diplomatic marginalization by the Americans, Nigeria has chosen to weaponize something Washington desperately needs. Nigeria's mineral wealth extends far beyond the oil reserves that made it famous. The country holds substantial lithium deposits scattered across several states, with Nasarawa, Ekiti, and Cross River states showing particularly promising geological formations. These reserves can help America reduce dangerous dependence on Chinese suppliers, but only with strong diplomatic relationships. Recent geological surveys have revealed that Nigeria's lithium deposits may be larger than previously estimated. New extraction technologies make previously uneconomical deposits viable for commercial mining. Australian and Canadian companies have expressed interest in joint ventures, but regulatory uncertainty and diplomatic tensions have slowed progress. Nigeria's position is particularly powerful because of its location and logistics. Unlike remote mining operations in other continents, Nigerian minerals can reach global markets through established shipping routes and existing infrastructure. The country's English-speaking business environment and common law legal system make it an attractive partner for Western companies seeking alternatives to Chinese-controlled supply chains. But most importantly, Nigeria has other options. India has emerged as another major mineral consumer, competing with both America and China for African resources. Brazil and other emerging economies have increased their mineral imports significantly. With this, Nigeria does not face a binary choice between American and Chinese partnerships. Multiple suitors compete for access to African resources. Nigeria's potential mineral retaliation represents an advanced form of economic warfare that does not require military confrontation or traditional sanctions. Instead, it leverages market dynamics and supply chain vulnerabilities to achieve political objectives. The beauty of this approach lies in its plausible deniability. Nigeria can simply prioritize other trading partners without clearly punishing America. American companies already face significant challenges competing with Chinese mineral suppliers. Chinese state-owned enterprises benefit from government subsidies, preferential financing, and strategic coordination that private Western companies cannot match. If Nigeria moves its mineral exports toward Chinese buyers, American companies lose access to one of their few potential alternatives to Chinese dominance. The timing could not be worse for America. America's clean energy agenda depends heavily on securing reliable supplies of critical minerals. Electric vehicle manufacturers need lithium and cobalt. Solar panel production requires various rare earth elements. Wind turbine construction demands specific mineral inputs. Without diverse, reliable supply chains, America's energy transition will be slowed down. Nigeria's approach to this confrontation demonstrates remarkable diplomatic experience. Rather than issuing ultimatums or making dramatic threats, Nigerian officials have adopted a more clever strategy of conditional cooperation. They express willingness to work with America while simultaneously highlighting the costs of damaged relationships. Nigeria's foreign minister expressed deep concern over potential EW's plans to expand travel restrictions, warning such measures would severely hamper trade agreements with West Africa, particularly in doubly critical minerals and energy sectors. This measured response allows Nigeria to maintain moral authority while applying economic pressure. The genius of Nigeria's position lies in its reasonableness. Nobody can accuse Abuja of acting irrationally or aggressively. Instead, Nigerian officials present themselves as reluctant participants in a conflict created by American policies. They would prefer cooperation but cannot ignore the practical consequences of diplomatic marginalization. Meanwhile, Nigerian negotiators understand that America faces limited alternatives. U.S. companies had failed to maintain their mines based in the DRC and sold them to Chinese counterparts in 2016, resulting in the loss of decades of U.S. financial and diplomatic investments. This pattern of American retreat from African mineral markets strengthens Nigeria's bargaining position. Behind the diplomatic maneuvering lies a technological Cold War that will determine global leadership for generations. America and China are racing to dominate emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, quantum computing, renewable energy, and advanced manufacturing. All these technologies depend on critical minerals that Africa, including Nigeria, possesses in abundance. The concerns extend far beyond economic competition. Military superiority increasingly depends on technological advancement, which requires reliable access to critical materials. Advanced weapon systems, satellite technology, and cybersecurity infrastructure all depend on minerals that China currently dominates. Losing access to alternative suppliers like Nigeria could compromise America's national security. Nigerian leaders clearly understand these dynamics. They recognize that mineral wealth represents more than economic opportunity. It offers geopolitical leverage that can reshape international relationships. By threatening to align with Chinese supply chains, Nigeria forces America to reconsider its approach to African partnerships. However, if Nigeria successfully uses mineral leverage to change American behavior, other resource-rich nations will take notice. Mali's gold, Ghana's manganese, and Burkina Faso's various mineral deposits could become tools of diplomatic pressure. A new era of resource diplomacy could emerge, fundamentally altering global power dynamics. American corporations have more to lose from Nigerian mineral retaliation than government officials might realize. Tesla's electric vehicle production depends on lithium supplies that could become more expensive and less reliable if Nigeria prioritizes Chinese buyers. Apple's smartphone manufacturing requires various minerals that Nigerian policies could affect. General Electric's wind turbine business needs materials that diplomatic tensions could disrupt. The corporate response reveals interesting fault lines in American foreign policy. While government officials focus on security concerns and diplomatic principles, business leaders prioritize supply chain reliability and cost control. These different priorities create tension within American decision-making processes. Some American companies have already begun lobbying against travel restrictions that could damage relationships with mineral-rich African nations. They understand that diplomatic grandstanding can translate into real economic costs when supply chains face disruption. Corporate America's growing influence over foreign policy decisions could ultimately force more pragmatic approaches to African relationships. The situation also highlights broader questions about America's industrial strategy. Should the United States prioritize diplomatic messaging over economic interests? Can America compete effectively with China's more pragmatic approach to international relationships? These questions become more urgent as competition for critical minerals intensifies. Nigeria's mineral strategy could trigger broader changes across West Africa and beyond. The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, has watched carefully as member nations navigate relationships with major powers. Nigeria's success in leveraging mineral wealth could inspire similar strategies elsewhere. Ghana possesses significant manganese deposits essential for steel production and battery technology. Senegal holds phosphate reserves crucial for fertilizer manufacturing. Mali's gold reserves offer another form of economic leverage. If these nations coordinate their resource policies, they could collectively exert enormous influence over global supply chains. The regional dimension adds complexity to American decision-making. Alienating Nigeria might seem manageable in isolation, but losing access to West African minerals collectively could prove catastrophic. Regional integration and shared mineral policies could transform individual negotiations into broader strategic challenges. Chinese officials have probably noticed these dynamics and may encourage regional coordination among African mineral producers. Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative already provides frameworks for coordinating infrastructure development and trade policies. Extending this coordination to mineral exports would represent a natural evolution of Chinese strategy in Africa. Nigeria's mineral strategy offers important lessons for both American foreign policy and global resource governance. The era of taking African compliance for granted has ended. Resource-rich nations increasingly understand their strategic value and are willing to leverage it for political objectives. For America, the choice is either to adapt to new realities of partnership and mutual respect or face continued erosion of influence in critical regions. The travel ban controversy has become a symbol of broader American approaches to international relationships. Resolving it successfully could model new forms of diplomatic engagement based on equality rather than hierarchy. For Nigeria, the current strategy demonstrates how smaller nations can effectively challenge great power policies through economic leverage. Success in this confrontation could inspire similar approaches throughout Africa and beyond. The age of resource diplomacy may be just beginning. The ultimate resolution of this confrontation will likely depend on which side better understands the changing nature of global power. America's traditional advantages in military force and economic size matter less when critical resources are controlled by nations willing to use them strategically. Nigeria's mineral wealth represents more than economic opportunity. It offers a pathway to genuine sovereignty and international influence. Whether America chooses partnership or confrontation in response to Nigeria's mineral strategy will reveal much about its ability to adapt to new global realities. The next few months will likely determine whether Nigeria's mineral gambit succeeds in changing American behavior or whether diplomatic tensions escalate into economic confrontation. Either outcome will provide valuable lessons for other nations seeking to leverage their natural resources for political objectives. The age of resource diplomacy has begun, and Nigeria is leading the way. Is Nigeria about to change the rules of global trade forever, or will this standoff fizzle out before it even begins? Do you think the United States will back down and remove the travel ban, or will Washington double down and try to crush Nigeria's economy? And what about the rest of the world? Will countries like China swoop in and rewrite the power map, or will they keep their distance until the dust settles? Because if Nigeria pulls this off, it will not only be a win for one country, it could mark the start of a new era where resource-rich nations start flexing their muscles in ways we have never seen before. What is your take? Could this be the beginning of Africa's economic awakening on the world stage, or a dangerous gamble that could backfire? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you found this breakdown eye-opening, hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into global power plays, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story that could reshape the world you live in.